Hi, everybody. Welcome to our replay viewers. My name is Tanya Kubo, and I'm a digital marketer who helps authors, speakers, and entrepreneurs amplify their messages and connect on a deeper level with audiences using socially savvy strategies. And I am here today with Lori Young. Say hi to everybody, Lori.
Hi, everybody.
So Lori, is this your first Facebook Live?
Oh my gosh, no, I've done 1,000 of
Okay.
these.
Awesome. Okay. Well, see, she's an old hat. Like, this is great. Some folks that we've had on haven't done Facebook Live before, and it has been so much fun doing the 12 days of Facebook Live, where we are going live every single day, 12 days in a row. And we have been covering some incredible topics that I think are of particular interest to authors, to speakers, and to entrepreneurs. Today, we are going to be talking about taking the plunge, quitting your day job, which I think is something that is particularly of interest to, I would say, like any kind of creative entrepreneur. I think a lot of creatives always have the hope and the dream that they could make a living doing their craft, whatever their craft is. And I also know that there are, coaches and consultants out there that dream of doing that full time as well. So if this is a topic you think somebody would appreciate, or people within your network would appreciate, I would just ask that you share it. Lori is going to give us some great insight into her path. And I know that I'm going to learn a lot. And so I know that you're going to learn a lot. So first, I want to explain why I've invited Lori to join us this evening. And Lori and I met at a conference. And Lori and I have two different paths right now. So I work full time outside of my business. And I've been building my business now for 11 years. And I have worked full time for most of those 11 years outside of my home. So I do it, wee hours of the morning, late hours at night. But Lori has recently taken the plunge and she has quit her day job. So Lori, I would like you to tell us a little bit more about where you're at right now and that experience. And then we're going to kind of walk people through some of those considerations that they need to make before they make a similar decision.
Well, it was probably about a month and a half ago when I really started considering, and it was right before the conference that we met at, and I just was really feeling this pull that it was kind of now or never. Maybe it was a great time for me to, I don't think my boss would say that, but it was a great time for me to step out of what I was doing. We had accomplished a huge goal that we'd been working on for a couple of years. And I kind of knew that that would be the kind of turning point or the catalyst for me. And so we talked about it, and I kind of prepared myself mentally for it and just said, I really think it's time. And I really think if I don't do it now, if I don't kind of drop everything and pursue this now, I'm a little bit concerned it may never happen. So that's what I did. I kind of announced that it was time for me to go and time for me to move on. And I really haven't looked back. Actually, today was my last day, and it was terribly bittersweet. Cried a few tears because that organization has been my heart and soul. And also in the back of my head, I've been planning and dreaming and scheming, and startup is my gig. I love to start things. So I already have lists of like tasks and things that I need to do. So that's where I'm at with that process. So it's very scary, and it's also very exciting.
I love that. Well, and I feel like, fear and excitement are really the same emotion. It's just one's positive, one's negative, right?
That's absolutely true.
And I love how honest you are about it, right? Like for you, it was like, it's now or never. Like I'm just, it feels like the right time. And so why not? But I think that for most people, there's three key points that they need to consider. There's the financial part, right? Like most of us need to keep a roof over our head to some degree. There's time, right? Like, do I have time to build my business to the point where I can leave my day job? Will I have more time to build if I do leave my day job? And then there's energy. Like, I mean, we all have a finite amount of energy. So if you don't mind, I'd like to walk, kind of through those 3 points with you, and maybe you can help us understand some of the considerations that you made going into this. So why don't we start with money? Because money is a big one.
Money is a big one. And, I'm a divorced mom. So this kind of plunge financially for someone who really sees money as like equal to or tantamount to my security, this was definitely the biggest one for me to consider. I'm a huge fan of Dave Ramsey. And so I worked really hard for a couple of years to become debt-free. Now, at that time, I'm not really sure that that's exactly, this is the reason I was doing that. But number one, I became debt-free. I worked really hard, paid off all of my debt. Number two, since I kind of started mulling this idea over, I took all of, I can do this because I received some property disbursement and some other financial things every month, but I was able to take my income from my day job and set it aside in savings. So I took 10% of it and put it into my business development fund. I put obviously 10% into tithe, and then 10%, and the rest of it I put into savings. So I made sure that for a couple months I could comfortably live without that monthly income that I'm getting from my job. And I think just the preparation too of making sure that the budget that I currently have coming in, that I can continue to put 10% towards my tithe, 10% towards my business, and 10% towards my savings. And it's tight. It's a tight budget, but I think that's a good thing because I think that'll motivate me to work on that 80% that we've talked about, that income producing thing, and kind of get me motivated to focus on that. So I am a little bit fortunate. I do have the other monthly income coming in, from a couple of other sources. So that definitely helps a lot. But I definitely have to make some sacrifices to live within those means, for sure.
So what I like about what you just said, so there was some planning, right? You didn't just wake up one day on a whim and go, I think I'm going to quit my job today.
Exactly. I really did not.
Right? You also have some obligations, right? You said you're a single mom. So, so there's some little people who depend on you, or maybe there's some bigger people. I don't know the ages of your children.
Yes.
Roof over your head, there's food you need to eat. So I like that you talked about that planning. You also did mention that, you worked really hard to be debt free. This is something that's key. I mean, I think that we tend to need so much more to live on when we carry debt than when we don't. And that's so I think that, right, it like really does reduce the burden. And also, debt is kind of an expense you can't control until you pay off the debt, right? The payment is the payment. Whereas your food costs can fluctuate, right? You can go shop sales or shop the farmer's market compared to shopping at the most expensive grocery store in town. You have a little bit more wiggle room on how much you're spending each month when you don't have that debt. So I think, I'm not saying you have to be debt-free before you take the plunge to quit your day job, but I would say that it makes the decision a little bit more peaceful. It just lifts a little bit of the stress. So do you agree?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think too that knowing that I can live without incurring more debt, and I haven't needed to do that for a long time, also helps me feel a lot more secure in this decision, that I can live well within my means, even if it's a bit uncomfortable and itchy, and we're eating at home a lot more than we're like running out and grabbing fast food. So I just have to learn to make different choices, and I can do that. So. Well,
and that's a really good point too, right? Is living on a budget. I think that it would be a mistake to quit your day job and focus fully on self-generated income if you don't know how much it costs for you to like live and breathe in the world right now.
Yeah.
Because there's also, and I think that this is an important point, is there is a cost to working outside of the home. This was some math that I did. I quit my job right after my first was born. I had this grand plan, right? Like my husband had a good job, good benefits. I was going to quit. I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. Life was going to be great. And then he got laid off when she was 3 weeks old. And that was my first experience in like, okay, now you have to make your side gig your main gig. And so, I just took those skills that I had already developed and started consulting. But one of the things that I had realized when I was going, okay, so without his income, like how much do I really need to make to keep us afloat? I had to factor in the cost of going to work that I had forgotten. So, things like I didn't have childcare at the time, but childcare is an expense for people who work outside the home that they can't control as easily. The cost of gas, the cost, like the type of car you need, depending on your distance between your office and your home. But then there's also food costs. I hadn't realized how much the people I worked with ate out in restaurants until I was no longer doing that. But that was like easily like $100 a month, just, birthday lunches and celebration lunches. And hey, you know what? We have to talk about this thing. We don't have time in the workday, so let's just go out to lunch to do that. So there's those costs. But if you're not familiar with budgeting, it's really hard to get a handle on what the real amount of money is you need to bring in to break even.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I really did crunch the numbers a few times during the month. And I really, really had to make sure that it was feasible. There are things that I kind of take for granted because I already kind of work from home, where I was working was about a half a block away, so I could walk to work. My kids are both in school full time, so I don't have that childcare cost. And those are all factors that if I had some of those extra expenses, this might not be a feasible thing. But the point is that I really crunched the numbers and absolutely made sure. I went back and looked at my budget from a few previous months, and I looked at realistic costs for food. And I share custody, so there are weeks that I have the boys and the other weeks I don't. So that helps with my expenses as well. So again, it's a little bit of a unique situation. And so, if I were married, that I would have a partner that I would need to consider all of this with too. And there'd be other expenses incurred in that. So because I'm not, I think it kind of affords me the opportunity to kind of manage my budget independently. So I can be a little tougher and meaner about.
Right. Well, and
to my kids, no.
Yeah. Well, and also, part of the time when it's just you, then you can manage yourself. So
Right.
In the idea of management, so I'd like to talk about the second point, which is time. Mm-hmm. And time, I think, as a consideration, works in two directions. The first being the idea of, okay, so if I know for a fact it's my long-term goal to do whatever I'm doing on the side, to do that full time, do I have the available time right now working full time to build that to a profit level, whatever that profit level is for me? And then the flip side of that is, well, if I cut ties and take the plunge and quit my day job, I will have more time to invest in generating income through my business. So two sides to consider. Give me your take on it.
Well, that's funny because now that I don't have a day job, I tend to be a little bit of an overcommitter because everything sounds like so much fun. I'm an intern for Sherry Gregory and Amy Carroll on their podcast. And I know that Kathy Lipp has thrown that out there, and I have joked around with her a little bit that maybe I could quit my job and just be a professional intern. And so those kinds of opportunities are always in the back of my mind. I've been approached by a couple of different people to be, a freelance writer, or a contributor to local magazines and things like that. I think that it's exciting to think that I would have more time, but I also think I need to be a lot more disciplined with my time, because it would be really easy to jump into a whole lot of really fun projects and not really commit the time to what I knew I needed to do, which was to sit down and actually do the work that I already know how to do. With the conference that we've been through, I have been given every single bit of information that I need to follow through on my plan and my dream. And I really just haven't had the time to do it. And now I do. And it would be really easy for me to stack up other things instead of, again, sitting down and committing to doing some of the hard stuff of actually putting this business together.
So, okay, those are all really good points. I know that I have found that work will expand to fill the time that I allot to it, right? So if I feel like I have all day to do something, I take all day. The other thing that I think you alluded to, right, is there's a difference between being busy and being productive. And sometimes we can get so busy, right, and get so excited about all the things we're doing and lose sight of the fact that we're not being productive.
Right. Am I really doing things that are actually getting me towards my goal of starting my own business? Or am I doing the fun things that I like to do that maybe aren't working me towards, because they're not necessarily paid gigs. They're just, they're things that I just like to do.
Right.
But I don't know if it really helps me get towards the end of, getting people to know about my business and getting that promoted.
Exactly. And I think that that's a really important consideration to make if you're looking at taking the plunge and quitting your day job is, what's that time going to look like and how am I going to fill my time? Like, I feel like I am super productive because a lot of my business work occurs between 4 and 6 a.m. on weekday mornings, a little bit between 7 and 9 on weeknights, and then generally speaking, about 8 to 10 hours over the course of a given weekend, depending on what my family has going on. Now, I have to be really focused and really intentional because, I only have about 20 open hours a week to focus on this.
Right.
Without my day job taking up that chunk of time, it could be very easy to stretch that 20 hours of work into 40 and 60 hours and not increase the results.
For sure. Yes. Yes.
So I think that was a really good point that you brought up. And then also, as somebody who's taken the plunge, realizing that now that you've removed that day job, you've still got to transfer that discipline.
Yeah. So I again, kind of in preparation for this, I had to sit down and really map out kind of a routine or a plan for myself for each day and what that's going to look like and where I'm going to fit in some of the things I've been needing to add back in, like exercise and eating right. And also like a little time in my day for continued education, a little time for just eating the frog, as they say, doing some of the hard stuff of writing or planning, and then a little bit of time to pick up the phone and make a few phone calls and get people interested or excited about some of the other things, that I'll be doing, like in terms of coaching or actually scheduling some speaking engagements and that kind of thing. So I'm going to have to be a lot more intentional with my time than I think I was when I was working, because I kind of always had stuff to do. People would kind of put stuff on my plate and I would know every day what it was I was working on. And I don't have that. Now I have to be fairly self-directed.
Right. And I think that, so, what I'm hearing you talk about right now is, if you're going to take the plunge and quit your day job, then you need to make sure that you plan out and structure your days just as if you had that day job, right?
Yes.
Like really giving your business the priority it deserves and that it warrants now that it's your A game.
Mm-hmm.
Does that
For
sound
sure.
about right? Okay.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Awesome. So we've talked about the money consideration. We've talked about the time consideration. Now let's talk about the energy consideration. And this is big. So the example I always use is if you have a physical job or maybe a job that has a lot of long hours, do you have the available like energy, like physical stamina to build something on the side to get to the point that you feel like it could be your solo gig? Or if you quit that job, what's that newfound energy going to be like when you're building something on the side, right? Are you going to be able to channel that energy? Are you going to find yourself like a little bit lazy because you don't have this external force pulling for that energy? What can you tell us about that in this consideration of energy?
This was probably my biggest reason for taking the plunge. Actually, I work for an organization that, as I said before, we had a huge goal. I've been there almost 4 years, and our goal was to open a coffee shop to do hands-on job training. Well, every single ounce of my energy and my heart and my soul went into building this project for the last 3 years. And it really was okay. I was able to balance doing some writing. I went to that conference last year as well. I was able to kind of have a little bit of heart space and a little bit of physical energy left over. But starting this year, we really had to hit the ground running, and we sprinted for this entire year. So I looked back on my blog where I would normally have contributed on a pretty regular basis, and I made 0 posts this entire year. I had one speaking engagement that wasn't a speaking engagement related to our nonprofit. And I've done plenty of speaking. It's all been towards the nonprofit, which is great and important, and it was very, very valuable. But in terms of this business and what I've been wanting to do and dreaming about, I had absolutely nothing left over at the end of the day. And when I looked at, and whether this is fair or not, I'm not really sure, but this is the truth for me. But when I looked at where our organization was going and what I was going to need to commit to continue to take it to that next level, I knew that I would be saying goodbye to this dream for an indefinite period of time, because that would just take so much more of my energy. And it was a heartbreaking decision too, in a lot of ways, because I really was very invested in that. Again, like, my heart physically, my soul, my brain, like every part of me, every inch of me went into this. And I don't regret it for a second. It was the most amazing experience I've ever had in my life. It was the most life-changing. I have learned more in that job to go towards what I want to do next. But there really was a decision making. I really had to make a decision. Do I move forward and keep doing that? Or is it time? Have I reached my goal, which was to get our coffee shop opened? And can I easily take a break at this point and put that energy towards that momentum, really, and put it towards, starting my own business? So it's hard to talk about because a lot of people were invested in me, and I was invested in a lot of people, that I love too. So
I really appreciate, though, the fact, this is unusual, I think, for you to be willing to come on live and talk about this decision like the very last day of your day job, right? Most people who I've heard talk about this, right? It's like they quit their job 10 years ago, right? And they're going for like 10 years of successful experience to talk to other people about why they should quit their day job and pursue their dream or their own business or whatever that is that they should pursue. And you're here like really fresh and really raw from the emotion of quitting a job that you love. That's the other thing that I think is important for people to understand. In order to take the plunge and quit your day job doesn't mean you have to hate it. It doesn't have to be an evil, awful, terrible place to work with horrible ogres. You can love what you're doing and yet feel called to fulfill your dream even more.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes, like, I don't know this for a fact. I've done no research on this. I don't have academic backing, but I wonder if sometimes it's actually easier to be successful when you leave a job you love versus when you leave a job from a place of bitterness and resentment. Because I think there's some emotional healing that has to come from that. And
I
so
sure hope that's true.
yeah, well, we'll check in with you in a year. And then you can let us know if it's, we'll give you a year. See how generous we are here?
That's funny because I was actually going to say, I can't wait to come back and talk to you in a year and see where I'm at. Like, I really do think I'm on like the edge of like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I know that. I'll need a year to prove my point.
Right, exactly. And you know what? And you've got witnesses. We've got Jennifer here watching us tonight. We've got Ted. We've got Kayla. So, you definitely are, I think, speaking to some like inner desires of people. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about money. We've talked about time. We've talked about energy. I think you've done a really good job of giving us some hows, right? Like for the money point is, if you can, get debt free first. But no matter what, make sure you have a budget. Make sure you understand the real cost of doing life before you take that most steady form of income away.
For sure.
Really evaluate your available time. Evaluate whether this is a good time for it. And then also that energy. And I think especially as we age, right, we just find that, our immune systems just don't hold up. We get tired more easily. I think there's definitely a need to really consider, if we're putting off our dreams until we retire, say until we're 60 or 70, like, are we going to be at a level of fitness and be able to have the quality of life we want to build a business at that point? Or is now the age of 40, the age of 30, the age of 20 really the time to do it? Would you have any other advice for folks that might be considering taking the plunge?
Well, obviously, so much prayer went into it for me. And, I even like, even today, I knew it was kind of winding down that last hour, and I was still second guessing, my decision. But talking to you now and really thinking through the next year, I just have this peace that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And it truly is, it's a decision that you have to make with the people that you love. And if you're a person of faith, it's a decision you have to make with God. For me, it has to have that backing. I just needed to know that I wasn't going to be doing this on my own. And even if I made the most horrible mistake in the world, and this was totally not what I was supposed to be doing, that God is still faithful, and I've developed all these skills as a development director. So there's always this other backup plan that if this really doesn't work out, I have developed skills as a development director. I always have that to fall back on. I know how to make coffee, mostly, kind of. I can take the money. So if I had to do that, I can do that for extra income. I have an incredible amount of resources, an incredible amount of gifts. There's always something I can do. So I guess maybe that would be the fourth thing is, just be willing to have a backup plan,
Right. And trust the skills that you've developed, right? Like, I mean, you're a marketable person. And so you can fall back on that if you need to. So I want to share, Ted says he is so proud of you. So he must be somebody you know.
He's my boyfriend.
Oh, okay. So Ted is very proud of you. So you've got one in your corner, and then we have Jennifer. Jennifer's been tuning in most days for the broadcast, and she's giving you some applause.
Aw, thanks, Jennifer.
I think that you have given us so much. Like, it's going to take me a while to unpack this. We didn't do a lot of prep work for this interview because I wanted this to be casual, and I knew that you'd be really fresh on this decision. But you've helped, I think, all of us understand that it's not something you do on a whim. You don't just take the plunge and quit your job just in a blaze of glory because you're mad. You do some planning, you do some preparation. You said you do some prayer, and you really look at those limited resources of money, time, and energy. So, Lori, thank you so much for unpacking this with us. I really appreciate you having the courage to go on live with us tonight, and I hope all our viewers have an excellent day.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Tanya.